It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
The average person, based upon, statistics on planning and preparation, most people are treating life like they're the supporting character
right.
in this episode of life. When the reality is, you are the A-list celebrity actor that is involved in this story. So by all means, start acting like you're the star, and let's put together a plan. Let's figure out how this is all going to work through some type of vision plan. And this will also help you get out of your head on these false assumptions, this poverty mindset that I was talking about. Because I think so many of you guys get caught up in thinking, well, I can't do that. Brian, come on. Being wealthy? That's not for me. And right. Remember, what motivated this entire movement of me even getting into the financial field, because I didn't know anything about stock market. I didn't know anything about investing. I didn't know anything about budgeting when I was sitting in high school and in college, until the point that I had a high school economics teacher. We all know that he's also the wrestling coach, and it was one of those things. He's every stereotype. But right. He did say that key thing. He said, if you want to be a millionaire, every one of you in this room could do it if you could just save $100 a month.
Sure.
And as the crew leader at Hardee's at the time, I was like, I could save $100 a month. And it's true. I mean, it was actually, we've done the math, Bo. The number was actually lower than $100.
That's right,
if you start saving in high school, it's in the $70s, $80 a month range. If you wait until you're 22, it's really $100 right. a month if you have the right assumptions built into it. So get out of that poverty mindset and realize you can do this. This is not something that you need to be scared of or think or have some jealousy that you're not going to have the opportunities everybody else has. And this is also another thing. I had a meeting last week with a podcast listener who's also a client, and they'll listen to this and probably get some enjoyment that I'm repeating something that we talked about. Is they're very successful. And one of the things that I thought was interesting is we were kind of talking about, and this is a common trend I noticed with a lot of my clients, is that they were talking about how wealth kind of snuck up on them. You don't realize until one day you look at your net worth statement, because hopefully you're tracking those every year. We've told you many, many times, start doing annual net worth statements. But you're going to wake up one day and you're going to look down at that annual net worth statement and you go, holy cow.
How did we get here?
How did we get here?
Yeah.
You have to get quiet and look around and go, it snuck up on me, that son of a gun. And it's true. I mean, it really is one of those things where it is, and that's why it's back to that marathon analogy with the, obstacle course of financial life that you have to overcome these things. But it is one of those many small steps that over time builds up until you have the culmination of a financial life well lived. So pay attention to all the different things, and let's actually put foot to ground on what are some implementation things you can do to help you get past these when and how much scenarios.
Yeah, and what I think is so interesting is that you talk about working through that. It's a process where you kind of have to mature in your understanding. I've heard you say this 1,000 times before, Brian, but when you were a young child, you always said that you did go-kart math, right?
Yeah.
You kind of had an idea of how much your, dad made a year, and you knew how much a go-kart was. And so by that math, he could go buy you 200 go-karts, right? Or something like that.
I think you give my dad way too much credit. He was a great man, but I think at the time, go-karts were $500. I think I gave him credit that he could probably buy me, 60, 70 go-karts.
Okay, there we go. Okay, maybe not 200 go-karts.
Not 200.
But either way, it's pretty simple math, and you had to kind of come to this understanding that you had to mature in the way that you thought about approaching those financial decisions. Well, reaching goals is the same way. In terms of planning for retirement, you do have to think about what are you doing today to begin getting that plan in place for tomorrow.
Yeah, we've done entire podcasts, but I think it's important in this one, even though it is very much talking about 30,000 foot planning. Let's give you some actual implement goals or benchmarks that you can use to kind of evaluate yourself. If you are thinking specifically about retirement and you want to know, do I have enough money? One of the easiest ways. We've done an entire podcast series on this, but take what you think you'll need for living expenses. And if it's way in the future, you're going to need to grow it for some inflation factor. But let's keep it simple and just assume you know what your living expenses are. Multiply by 25.
Sure. And
see what that number is, and then see how far you are and what it's going to take to reach that number and get realistic. Those are some baseline just planning assumptions. And that's built upon the back of the 4% withdrawal rate. If you think about it, you have 100%, divide it by if you're doing a 4% withdrawal rate, you divide by 4, that's 25 years is what that is. So that's how the math works. If you're a little more optimistic about life, maybe you just multiply it by 20, but I like it. It's somewhere in between that 20 to 25 multiply factor is going to help you on figuring out a good baseline for what you might need in retirement. Just don't underestimate the value of inflation, because that could have a play. Because I know a lot of you guys are in the FIRE movement where you're planning on retiring very, very early. The only thing I would caution you on that is that obviously $50,000 today is not going to be $50,000 15, 20 years from now.
Sure.
So just make sure you're not letting that inflation factor kind of cause you to have a blind spot in that area of your life.
So what are some of the things that we can do, Brian, if we want to plan for the when and the how much? What are some things we can start doing now and start thinking about now to move in that direction?
Well, I mean, the big thing is you got to put it on paper. I mean, how many times I've mentioned it, plans of action do not occur until they're actually recorded. Mm-hmm. And here's the cool thing, and this is also kind of that mystical pixie dust part of the equation, is every time, and this is not just your personal life, this is in my business life as well, when I record goals and then I actually state on paper what I think I want the next step to be, it's somehow, even though I can't tell you physical action I've taken in all aspects of my life, it starts moving towards it. I think
Sure.
There's something psychological and going on in your background of your brain that helps you work towards those goals. And that's why as a group, humans like to record their goals. So that's the first thing, is make sure it's documented and make sure that you actually have turned this daydream into something that is a recorded goal.
And so when I write that down, Brian, do I just need to say, okay, well, my financial goal is one day I want to retire and I want to be rich, and I write that down on a sheet of paper and I'm moving that direction. Is that what you're talking about?
It has no meat. You got to have some details to it. And that's why I think it's perfect when we set this when we put the header up there. When and how much. And that's the key components. You got to tell what year is this going to occur? What's the deadline for this goal? And then how much, is that number, so I can use my nerdy little financial calculator or doing a Google search to come up with a time weighted and, present value calculation of what I need to be doing on my money right now to be effective.